What's up with y'all? What's up with y'all? Welcome back to Moxy Approved. Man, I got another Tariq Nasheed classic. Tariq Nasheed has been leading the talks in California as far as for reparations. They even have some talks going now in San Francisco about black residents there getting 200,000 a year. Well, in this clip, Tariq Nasheed joins a Twitter space and gets into a debate on reparations with what some of us may call some Karens, man. This one is real good. Before we get to it, please do me a quick favor. Hit that like button. Make sure you got the notification bell turned all the way up to all. If you haven't yet, apply pressure to that subscribe button. Apply pressure to that subscribe button. Let's go.
So who is next?
I believe it's Tariq and then Nico.
Okay, go ahead, Tariq.
How's everybody doing? I'm hearing a lot of different adversarial retorts about reparations, and reparations is not as difficult as many people try to make it seem. Reparations is very simple. It's for the foundational Black Americans, the descendants of the people who built the country from scratch and they were never compensated. Our ancestors created all of the wealth for the country, and that country has been locked in and maldistributed into the dominant society, and we've been locked out of it. And that money has compounded. There was a gentleman who called up earlier saying that after a few generations, generational wealth disappears. That's absolutely not true. After a few generations, that money compounds and it becomes stronger and it becomes bigger. We've been inheriting a debt as foundational Black Americans because we have never, ever, ever been compensated specifically for the wrongs that were done to us. And it's time to get that compensation now. Reparations is a strong topic now because we've tried to play the game where we're going to be polite. We're going to try to play the kumbaya game. And unfortunately, the dominant society has made it a part of the culture to practice anti-Black racism as a part of a culture. So instead of us trying to keep playing nice and play the kumbaya game, we're saying we just need to be compensated so we can do our thing. We need to do the right thing. People say we need to move on. We cannot move on with an inherited debt, and we're still suffering from that debt. So it's only a problem when foundational Black Americans are talking about being compensated for the wrongs that were done to them. When the Asian community, when they got reparations, nobody complained. The Native American community, they get reparations times 10. If you look at government grant programs and government grant websites, there's so many programs and set aside funds earmarked specifically for the red Native American tribes, but there's absolutely nothing earmarked for foundational Black Americans or Black people specifically. Anything that Black people get, it's under the cloak of a minority benefit where all people benefit from it, which is another form of slavery. So we're saying we don't want any more slave deals where if we get something, everybody else has to get a piece of it too, because that's been a trick bag and that keeps us on the bottom rung. So we're saying that we, as foundational Black Americans, for the first time in history, we need to be specifically compensated for a specific wrong that was done to our specific group. And it's not that hard to determine who's a foundational Black American. Most people in this country, they know their background, they know where they're from. We as foundational Black Americans are the only non-immigrant groups in this country. So we understand our background. We have bureaus and we have ways to determine our lineage, to see who was on the census forms back in 1870, all of that. So we know how to determine who's who. We're just getting to the dollar sign. What's going to be the correct dollar sign? I say we start at $20 trillion. That's a start. And when people say that that's going to harm the economy, it's not going to harm the economy because we're giving money to all of these other foreign groups. We're giving money to Ukraine. We're giving money to Afghanistan, and that money doesn't really cycle back into our economy. When we get our reparations, and I'm saying when because it's not an if, we're definitely going to get reparations because it's the right thing to do and justice always prevails. When we get our reparations, that's going to boost the economy because that's going to circulate more money in the economy and that's going to make a better society for everybody. The problem is because of the culture of anti-Black racism, there's a psychic sick benefit that many people in the dominant society gets by thinking about us being deprived. Everything has to be about deprivation for foundational Black Americans. Their status and power is judged by our deprivation. So there has to be a cultural shift where that's not going to be normalized anymore because we're no longer going to participate in that. We're saying that we have to have an equitable society where we produce justice, and justice is compensating the people who have been the most wronged, who have built this country from scratch. That's the right and just thing to do. And I'll land my plane there.
Hey, thank you for sharing and being patient. Can I just ask, because I haven't heard this term before, and apologies for my ignorance. Can you explain for the space what do you mean by foundational?
Black
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
Black Americans, that means a Black person who is a non immigrant. We don't use the term African American because that makes us equal to immigrants, and we did not immigrate from Africa. Foundational Black American is a Black American whose ancestors were the foundation of America. We didn't come to America. We built America. We're the only group who actually built it from scratch. So that makes us foundational Black Americans.
Okay, thanks
What
for
do you mean?
explaining.
What do you mean
So,
by built from scratch?
Built from scratch.
Like we explained.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean from
That
scratch?
means there was no country, there was no United States until Black people built it.
Well, I would have to push back there because Black people did not build this country on their own. That's just not historically accurate.
Right. We did.
And
But
also one other point, if I may, is that very few people that I know in my life have any generational wealth. I have no generational wealth. My best friend has no generational wealth. So this idea that every living American would have just nonstop generational wealth, I also have to say that's just not factual.
well, not every American have generational wealth in tangible land or money, but the generational wealth comes in whiteness. There's the monetary value to whiteness itself. That's why immigrants came over here with $2 in their pocket, because they understood that their whiteness would get them benefits, privileges, intangibles. A perfect.
Wait. Hold on. Just 1 second, please. I don't really want to, call some whiteness. I mean, people didn't come here because of whiteness. Like we didn't. This country wasn't founded on anyone's color, and slavery existed in many different lands. I think you were listening when we spoke about it. But slavery happened on many different continents, people of many different colors. And so slaves were never chosen for their skin color. Different people had tribes and factions that sadly sold from all over the world, sold their own countrymen, even though it wasn't really a country. And the people with the emojis, Ash, can you help with that? It's just respectful, and we don't have that in the space. That just constant heckling.
Yeah,
So,
guys, here's the thing. This is
so,
a
so
difficult.
yeah. I mean, racism is definitely a thing about color, but slaves weren't chosen for their color, and I don't think slave owners and tribes that sold their own, people into slavery, I don't think they did it over color either.
Man, well, that historically that's not correct, because over here in the early colonies, they absolutely made it color based, and they were very explicit about slavery being color based. And the white people who were indentured servants, they would be able to work out a contract, and they said that the Black people or the Moors would have to be enslaved for life. So they absolutely made it on a color basis. And they codified it by saying that the children of Black women will be enslaved. So it was explicitly based on color. In this country, when Black people were trying to get out of slavery, and even when we were free, there were still Black codes and there were still laws that would keep us in a detrimented situation. So all of it was about race. And when you look at some of the documents and the laws in this country, and even the Constitution, there's a famous passage saying that a Black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. That was in the Supreme Court ruling. So it was very explicit about race, and we were targeted specifically as Black people, as foundational Black Americans. No other group was targeted like us.
Well, I mean, the East India Company took Irish first. That was before the African slave trade. But I really appreciate, we have got a lot of hands, but thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate it. And you can definitely get back, but let's let some other people
Yeah,
respond.
no, absolutely. Thank you so much. And the Irish were paid, by the way, just to throw that in there.
So
Yeah,
what?
so I don't know what that means, but I don't even want to know what that means. But I appreciate you coming. I will say one thing, if I may. Probably the most sound part, and you can take this as constructive criticism. I'm a strategist. Probably the most sound part of what I heard you say was the economic factor, that it would incentivize the economy. I don't particularly agree with it, but it's an argument that's been made by other groups. It's an argument that's been made by several other groups that if you that the money will trickle down the economy, right? So I do wanted to I did want to sort of give credit to that, but thank you for sharing. Not really comfortable with "they will pay" kind of thing, because I don't
Yeah.
even know what that's about. Like, I'm not down with that. But anyway, but I
So
appreciate
before we go
sharing.
to the next person, can I just jump in? Because I want to just kind of, there's 386 people listening to this space, a lot of folks who came in when we shifted the topic to reparations in San Francisco. This has been an incredible space. It's been very respectful. All of the speakers, I think, have been very respectful. And whenever I get the chance to co-host a space with Phenomenology, we really do try to make sure that every voice gets to be heard. We're not going to tolerate ad hominem attacks. We're not going to, tolerate people going after each other personally. And the thing about the emojis is, if you're using emojis to, like if I'm speaking and you're laughy facing because you're mocking what I'm saying, if you're down in the audience, that's fine. If you're a speaker, it's classless and it's not in keeping with what we're um trying to try the discussion that we're trying to facilitate here. And to that point, I've listened to a lot and participated in a lot of spaces on reparations, and I think that the nuance of the argument that the advocates of reparations are making is lost in so much of the rhetoric, right? If you ask the average white person, they probably believe that reparations means that all Black people everywhere, no matter where they came here or whatever, get a big $5 million payout from the government, right? The nuance is important, and there's a lot I think that's said um, that is just missed in the way that these conversations are normally had. So we're trying to have the conversation in a respect, but I just wanted to reset because we do have a lot more people here. Chris, you're next.
Hilarious. Hilarious. One thing that I like that Tariq Nasheed brought up is the value of being white in this country. And they don't really like talking about it. Like, it's just something that's invisible, that doesn't exist, when we all know it exists. That you get extra things just for being white. So I'm glad he brought that up. Let me know what you think about this debate in the comments section. It was pretty unfair if you ask me, man. Well, anyways, you know how we like to end our videos over here at Moxy Approved, right? With that water. I see y'all here next time on Moxy Approved.